Have you ever wondered why is change just so damn hard? Well, if not, lucky for you, I have. And I set a goal and I make a plan and I even start taking action. But then, somewhere along the way, I hit a wall. And the next thing I know, I find myself falling back into my old patterns, which makes me lose all the motivation that I got. And before you know it, what happens? Well, you're right back where you started. And for me, I just quit. Can you relate with that? Well, if you can relate and you find yourself feeling stuck in a cycle of wanting to change, but you never actually are able to make it stick, then this episode's for you. Because today I'm breaking down the cycle of change, why you struggle to change, how to identify which phase of the cycle that you're in, and most importantly, how to finally make change stick. So stay tuned. Okay, let's get right into it here. First off, despite what you are doing and what you have tried, let me tell you that change is not impossible. You're just approaching it the wrong way. And that might sting a little bit, but think about anything in your life. There's so many things that you have changed and created. So you can't make the statement that you just can't change because most people think that change is this straight line. You decide, you commit, you succeed. Yay! But in reality, change happens in phases. Realistically, it's just a cycle. And if you don't understand what phase you're in, you will always feel like you're failing, even when you're actually on the right path. So first, let's jump into why is change so hard? Well, like we do every week, we have to get to the root of the actual issue. And again, the culprit for making change so damn difficult is that squishy 3-pound lump between your ears. Again, your brain is wired for comfort, not progress. It wants to keep you safe, and safe to your brain means more predictability. Even if your current habits are terrible and killing you, they might even be keeping you stuck, but your brain prefers them because they are familiar. And when things are familiar, you aren't hit with stress hormones that make you feel worried or scared. And that's why anytime that you try to change, your brain throws up all kinds of resistance, like you procrastinate, you make excuses, you convince yourself that's not who you are, or you suddenly, conveniently forget why you wanted to change in the first place. Now, it's not because you're lazy, so I want you to throw that whole identity out. What it is because your brain sees change as a threat, and it will do everything it can to pull you back into your comfortable old ways. And this is where most people quit. But the problem isn't that you're failing, it's that you don't realize you're just in one of the many cycles of change. And this is the exact same cycle that addicts get stuck in. Because just like them, whether you want to believe it or not, we are all just addicted to our feelings. And the cool thing is once you understand where you are at in the cycle, you can realize that you're not stuck. You're just in the change process, and now you can celebrate. Okay, so let's dive in here. Let's break it down because there are actually 6 phases in the cycle of change. The first phase is what we call pre-contemplation. This is where you don't even see or notice that you have a problem or that you don't even realize that you want to change. Maybe people around you see it, most likely they do, but unfortunately for you, you are most likely 100% blind to it. So, a really good example for me is when I'm out of shape, but I don't even notice it. It's just who I am, and I don't really care about it because I can't see it. So, if you find yourself in this pre contemplation phase, it can be both good and bad. Because what's the saying? Ignorance is bliss, right? You can't change what you can't see. So everything just stays the same until one day you get pushed to the next phase, which is phase two, is called contemplation. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in this phase, you are now aware of the problem. You know something needs to change, but in this phase, you're still not doing anything about it yet. So, for me, going back to being out of shape, it's the day when I finally put on my pants and I finally realized that they're tight. Unfortunately, now I'm aware that I'm not as fit as I thought or wanted to be. And for me, this phase really sucks because now you're aware that there is a problem. However, you're not at the next phase and you aren't ready to make any changes yet. The saying goes, I know I need to change, but I'll get to it later. Or I'll get to it next Monday. Or, you know what, I just need to stretch these pants out. Whatever it is, that's what's usually going to keep you stuck in this phase. And most people can stay in this phase forever because knowing you need to change and actually committing to change are two very different things. And I would even say that this is one of the worst phases, at least for me, because at least in the first phase, you're totally oblivious to it. And now you're aware and accepting something that you don't even want every single day that you're reminded. And this can go on until you finally get so fed up at your pants not fitting that you move into the third phase. And this is the preparation phase. This is where you finally commit to making a change and you start preparing what you are actually going to change. You might buy a course, you might hire a coach, or you set a date to actually start. So, going back to me and being out of shape, this is when I come up with a plan of what my workout routine is going to need to look like and what is my diet going to be to get me to the desired fitness level that I want to get to. Now, in this preparation phase, you start to feel motivated, and as a result, you start feeling good. And a word of caution is we have to be really careful here because there actually is evidence that just going around and telling people what we're going to do gives us a little dopamine hit and makes us start to feel good, which is a problem because it can keep us stuck in this phase and never allows us to actually get into the next phase, which is the phase that most of us want to get to. Phase number four is the action phase. This is where we are actually creating real change. It's finally happening. You're taking action, you're going to the gym, you're waking up early, you're doing the work, you're doing the thing. You're actually committed to the change and putting in the work. And when you first get into this phase, it's probably uncomfortable at first, but lucky for us, we're using the excitement of being new. And that's what keeps us motivated for a few weeks. This is where it's kind of fun and it's exciting because it's new. And this will last for usually a few weeks to up to a few months. And lucky for us because it pushes us to get into the final phase, which is phase number five, the maintenance phase. Now, at this stage, the new habit actually starts to become your new normal. It's actually who you are becoming. And it doesn't take as much willpower anymore. And it starts to just become what it is that you do. And usually, there's two things that happen in this phase. You either adopt this new change as part of your identity and you keep the habit up. Yay, way to go, you're amazing. Or you do what I and most people do is you start a new workout, you start a new routine, you start a diet, and it's really exciting at first because we're taking action, right? Yay. And then we get into this maintenance phase. And this is where most people get kicked off the change train. Because after a few months, usually 3 for me, what happens? Well, it starts to get boring because it's not exciting, it's not new. The motivation starts to wear off, and we're no longer getting these little hits of dopamine to reward us for the new exciting things that we're doing. And so it starts to what? It starts to get hard again. And right on cue, because of the discomfort your brain starts telling you, is this even working? Why are we doing this? This is so uncomfortable. And what do? Well, you start to let off the gas for a moment. And eventually, what happens? Well, you start to fall back into your old habits and you go into this next intermediate phase. And this is called the relapse phase. It's not a terrible place, even though it might not sound that amazing, but this is where you slip. You skip a workout, you don't go to the gym, you go back to an old habit. Whatever it is, you just stop taking the action to change. So for me, this looks like when I go to Brazil on vacation for a month and I don't make time to go work out. And so I skip for a week. And then once I miss one or two workouts, my brain comes in and says, well, screw it. You've already missed a few. What's the point now? And here's what I want you all to hear is this is where most people think that relapse means that you failed. At least this is where my brain always goes to. I didn't do it, therefore I am a failure. This happened. I let the outcome of the situation define who I am. But listen to me. Relapse is not failure. This is literally, listen to me. This is part of the process of change. You don't know when, but listen to me when I say you will eventually relapse on anything that you're creating new. And here's the thing that most people don't know, that every time that you do relapse, you get a choice. Do you learn from this and get back on track? Or do you just quit completely? Because the people who succeed, they expect relapse and they use it as feedback, not as an excuse to stop completely. And here's the best part about relapse is that you get to decide what phase do you want to jump right back into. Do you go right back to pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, or do you go right back into action? And it doesn't matter which one you choose. You can even go right back into the maintenance because you have and had a good plan. You just made a mistake. And when you relapse, you are not starting at the beginning. Even though your brain is going to try to tell you otherwise, you can go back to pre contemplation because you're going back there with all the information that you've acquired on what worked, what didn't work, and you're taking it with you. So you see, it's not useless, it can actually be useful. So, those are all the steps. And I'm going to reiterate this that remember, you can relapse at any point of the cycle. You might be in pre contemplation, get into preparation, you might be in action. It doesn't matter which step. At one of those, you might relapse. And again, once you go into relapse, you get to decide what step you're going to go back into. So it doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the maintenance phase and then you relapse. Some people will relapse before they even get to the maintenance phase. Some people relapse before they even start taking action. So at any point, you're going to have a point where you relapse, and it's your opportunity to decide where do you want to go and what are you willing to commit to. Okay, so now that you know all the different phases of the cycle of change, let's go over how to actually stick with it. So the first thing we can do is step number 1, identify where you're at in the cycle. This is the most important thing. Which phase are you in right now? Are you in contemplation? Are you in preparation? Are you in action? Are you in maintenance? Once you can identify it and name it, you can stop fighting yourself and just focus on which step do you want to get to. And usually it's action. I want to get into action, or I need to get into maintenance. I need this to be part of who I am, part of my identity. So that's the first step. Where are you at? The second is we need to expect that we're gonna run into some sort of resistance and plan for the relapse. And most people quit because they hit some sort of resistance. But now you know that's just your brain trying to keep you in a familiar, comfortable place. So, what can we do? We can plan for it. We can make this part of your preparation. And what I mean by that is determine what obstacles do you feel like are going to come up as you go through all the cycles, as you get into the action, as you get into the planning, as you get into the maintenance? What are the stories? What are the obstacles that are going to come up? And how do you plan to push through it? This is something that elite athletes are so good at is they plan for not just crossing the finish line, but they also plan for what is it going to be like when mentally they're exhausted on mile 90 and they're dehydrated and their body's cramping and they got another 10 miles to go to finish their 100-mile run. We want to plan for that so that when it comes, we know what it is that we're going to do. Okay? Next step, number 3, focus on your next best step. Stop overwhelming yourself with the big picture. Just focus on the next best step for where you are. If you're in preparation, all you got to do is start taking a little action. If you're in relapse, don't beat yourself up and just decide, what step do I want to get back into today, tomorrow? But make it within the next 24 hours that you're going to do something to actually get out of where you're at. One of my favorite sayings is, one step at a time gets you across the finish line. So just remember that. I just got to go one more step. Number 4 is keep going. I know it sounds so simple, but we want to keep going until this new change is actually who you are. Because the goal isn't to stay motivated. We all know motivation is just a feeling and it comes, it goes, but real action comes from discipline. And the goal is to stay consistent until this becomes automatic and who you are. And this is something I can go into a whole nother podcast episode on. But one of the ways you know something is part of you is you're able to do it without any condition. You're able to do it in the morning, you're able to do it at night, you're able to do it in the afternoon. You will make sure that you will not end your day until you get this thing done. That is when you know that this is just who you are. Think of it the same thing as your name. If someone asks you your name in the morning, do you know it? Yes. If someone asks you your name in the evening, do you know it? Yes. If you're hanging from a cliff and someone comes up and says, "Who are you? What is your name?" You know that that's who you are. We want to get to the same point of these new habits that we're creating. We want it to be, this is who I am. I can do this at any time, anywhere, any place. Okay? So let's get a little bit of a homework assignment here because I know that everyone that's listening to this wants some implementation. You're not here for just information. What I want you to do is I want you to first identify what it is that you want to change. We have to know what it is that we want to change in order to start changing it. Then I want you to identify which phase of the cycle of change that you feel like you're in right now. And once you identify that, you're going to ask yourself this question: what's the next best action that you can take today to get to the next step in the cycle of change? Not tomorrow or next week or whenever things are perfect, but what can you do today? And if you're serious about making change, send me a DM on Instagram. Tell me what phase you're in and what you're committed to changing, because you know that you're not here to stay stuck. You were put here to evolve, to grow, to find your full potential. That's it for me, guys. If you found this helpful, please do me a favor. Take a moment, go leave me a 5-star review to let me know that this is resonating with you. And please share it with your accountability buddy to help them hold you accountable to your commitment of change. Thank you so much for being you and committing to change. Now go and get to work.